Okay, AJ gave me an idea last night while we were at B-Dubs, and I know you guys see all the Raw recaps, SmackDown, Impact, NXT, hear my talks about Disney, Universal, and watch the videos on Celebrity Apprentice, and pretty much watch me meddle through nonsense videos where I talk about randomness. Well, I actually have a point today, and I want to talk about something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And AJ gave me this idea last night while we were at B-Dubs. You know what? I'm going to do it now. So, here we go. So, without any further ado, let's get started with talking a little about Saturday Night Live. Okay, well, Saturday Night Live is something that used to be the gold standard in comedy. I mean, you had to be someone to make it to SNL. When you made it to 30 Rock and you got to say, live from New York, it's Saturday night! Everybody wanted to do it, obviously. It was what you wanted to do if you were a comedian. You wanted to get to Saturday Night Live. Just like you wanted to host The Tonight Show when Johnny Carson was hosting it, not Leno now, obviously. And thank God Leno's gone very soon. I'm very happy about that, because I'm really happy you're gone, Chin Boy. But I was the worst Jay Leno impersonation ever, but I legitimately hate that man because he stole The Tonight Show from David Letterman, and that was crap. Anyway, that was NBC's bonehead decision, not anybody else's. But, in order to talk about that, and I may talk about my dislike for Leno somewhere down the road, I might bring up my fact that David Letterman is the reason why I went into journalism back in high school, so, it didn't take me anywhere. But I had the idea to go into journalism because of David Letterman. He's one of my inspirations in life. Well, that's backtracking a little bit, because I want to mention the fact that Saturday Night Live used to be the destination if you were a comedian. You made it when you got to SNL. And there even had stuff like In Living Color on Fox, as well as, if you even want to call it that, you could stuff like Roundhouse and all that on Nickelodeon, that basically were kind of a version of the same thing. Basically a sketch comedy show to showcase comedians. Up-and-coming comedians, and comedians that hadn't broken out yet, and eventually would go on to become something great. How funny I mentioned all that, given the fact that Kenan Thompson is now on Saturday Night Live. So that's really interesting to see how the circle of life has been complete. So, SNL was really awesome. It was really major back in the day. I mean, Saturday Night Live started a long, long time ago. And, 1975, I mean, there were some really historic people. I mean, obviously, everyone that was in Saturday Night Live was really amazing. You're talking about Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd, and Belushi, and just Gilda Radner, I mean, Jane Curtin. This was a great cast. I mean, they were iconic characters. I mean, that's where the Coneheads came from. That's where the Blues Brothers came from. And this is where a lot of things started for a lot of superstars. I mean, a lot of people got their breaks on Saturday Night Live. Well, let's fast forward a little bit, and we're not going to talk about early years. I mean, I could talk about the early years, but this is not what this is about. I'm trying to get to something specific. And we're basically talking about the year of 1986 through 1995. So, in 1986, all the way up to 1990... SNL was home to some of the soon-to-be giants in mainstream motion picture comedy. Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, and Kevin Nealon. So, basically, these were the gold standard on comedy at the time. And they brought in Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, and Chris Rock came in for a time. And this was a great time of SNL's history. This is also when SNL started to break out into some of the iconic characters that usually would be portrayed by Dana Carvey, the church lady, and the complete, total versions of George H.W. Bush and Ross Perot. So, at this point, of course, there was all sorts of awesomeness. I mean, Phil Hartman is incredible. I could do a whole video on Phil Hartman, and God rest his soul, really, because Phil Hartman is incredible. The Dana Carvey characters, just like I said, iconic. Chris Farley and David Spade, their connection, it's unmistakable. I mean, they were the team, and I still stick to this day. No offense to Kevin James, I'm not a fan, but if Kevin James well, he wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for the fact that Chris Farley, of course, died way too early. Because he is pretty much a substitute for Chris Farley, and he tries to be Chris Farley in every single way possible. And Chris Farley is so amazing that you just cannot do what he does. I mean, you can try, you can do the pratfalls, you can do the forced comedy, but Chris Farley just made it work. And like I said, Rock, Spade, Sandler, and Farley, they were the four. But before them, obviously, we're talking Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, and Kevin Nealon. So, of course, we're talking about this time in SNL. Well, this time in SNL also led to Lorne Michaels coming up with the idea to do feature films. And feature films of SNL's past, obviously, I want to talk about some of those. It started off in 1980 with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi doing The Blues Brothers, and it was loved, absolutely loved. And we're leading towards a couple of movies that I'm going to be discussing today, and we'll gloss over those right now because we're going to go back to it. This whole video is about that. So we also mentioned Coneheads, which came on in 1993. We had an It's Pat movie that kind of failed in 1994. Al Franken's Stuart Smalley character had a Stuart Saves His Family in 1995. And then we ended up with like Night at the Roxbury and Blues Brothers 2000 in 1998, Superstar in 1999 with Molly Shannon's Mary Catherine Gallagher character, which just has nothing to do with Tim Meadows, the ladies' man character in 2000, and that horrible, horrible movie MacGruber in 2010. I don't really find Forte really funny. I don't really like Will Forte. MacGruber did not work for me, but this isn't to talk about the 2000s. Let's talk about now. And basically what I want to mention is something that I did not mention when I was talking about SNL feature films. And that happens to be a movie that I hold near and dear to my heart, Wayne's World. So, let's talk about Wayne's World. So, there was a lot, like I said, a lot of really iconic occurring characters in the 90s. And actually, I mean, there is, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a Dan Aykroyd character that I absolutely love, and that's Fred Garvin, male prostitute. I don't know why I find it so hilarious, but I do. And Aykroyd basically was a male escort, and he had braces on his legs. He's like, Fred Garvin, male prostitute. And I just wanted to say that, so there. We'll just talk about Dan Aykroyd some other time. 1990 had some great characters. Obviously, Simon, the British gentleman Simon for Mike Myers. And we had Rob Schneider started in the 90s as well. Did the Rich Meister, the Randmeister, making copies. You know, the copy guy. And Chris Farley, Mike Myers, Coffee Talk with Linda Richman. That was a Mike Myers deal. I really love that. Phil Hartman's Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer. There's some great characters. Cajun Man, Opera Man, all the different man characters Adam Sandler did throughout the years. The Hollywood Minute started in the 90s, in 1992, 1993 with David Spade. And this was basically the time that Matt Foley came in. My name's Matt Foley, and I'm a motivational speaker, and I live in a van down by the river. And Chris Farley was awesome in the mid to late 90s. Milton Wadhams actually started off from Office Space, started off on the 93-94 season of Saturday Night Live. And there was a lot of awesome characters as well. Mary Catherine Gallagher started in the late 90s, and the Spartans, Will Ferrell and Cherry O'Terry started in the late 90s. The Bill Brasky sketches with Ferrell and David Koechner, Mark McKinney, and Tim Meadows, as well as John Goodman sometimes. That started, and all these things were started back. That's when Jim Breuer joined the show. He did the Joe Pesci. And Colin Quinn signed up, and it was just like, it was a good time. SNL was great. And then, of course, we got into stuff like the Ambiguously Gay Duo videos, Mr. Peepers, and just Delicious Dish started out around this time. That's when Will Ferrell started the iconic YouTube videos that are known as Celebrity Jeopardy. And just a lot of great stuff. So, we want to talk about that, but we'll talk about that another time. So, I want to mention that real quick. So, in 1986 to 1990, basically, Dennis Miller, before then, was the host of Weekend Update. And Dennis Miller was replaced by Kevin Nealon. And, basically, this started, and they pretty much just revolutionized comedy. I mean, Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, they were just on point. Then when Farley and Spade joined the cast, I mean, it was amazing. And, of course, that's when we found out Adam Sandler could sing. And he played us the Hanukkah song on SNL during Weekend Update. And he did the movies with Farley and Spade. I thought they were really good as well. And, of course, sadly, at the end of the 94 season, Dana Carvey left. Well, he left midway through. And then Julie Sweeney left and Phil Hartman left. And Matt Foley's character, played by Chris Farley, was the last person left after for a long day. After Phil Hartman's final number, which was a ode to the Sound of Music, So Long Farewell. And at this, Phil walks back, he cuddles next to Farley, he sings goodbye and waves to the audience. And we've seen this clip a couple of times after Phil Hartman was unfortunately taken from us way too soon. But, I mean, this was a great time in SNL. And like I said, I want to mention the fact that right now, I really would be wearing a hat right now if I had it. But unfortunately, I lost it throughout the years, so I can't. But without any further ado, let's talk about the reason why we're here, and that would be... Oh yes! Yes! That would be Wayne's World. And this basically started on Saturday Night Live. There was a segment that was called Wayne's Power Minute. And this was in 1987 on the CBC television series It's Only Rock and Roll. This was done in Canada, of course. The main character first appeared on that show. And the SNL sketch, of course, spawned these two films that I'm about to talk about today. And several catchphrases that have entered into the pop culture lexicon. So, basically, this is about a public television station in suburban Chicago, in Aurora, Illinois. And this is hosted by Wayne Campbell, who played by Mike Myers, and his best friend, Garth Algar, which would be played by Dana Carvey. So, Wayne, of course, lives with his parents. They shoot the video in his parents' basement, and he shoots them live, of course, every Friday night at 10:30. It's Friday, it's 10:30, it's time to party. I'm your excellent host, Wayne Campbell. With me, as always, is Garth. Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. Okay. Anyway, like I said, this first episode did appear on the 13th episode of Saturday Night Live back in 1988. So this all started in 1988. So, basically, if you didn't know, the format of the show was very, very simple. Wayne and Garth would be singing the song, Wayne's World, Party Time, Excellent! And, of course, Garth was drumming with his drumsticks on the couch, or the lap, depending on where you were at the time. And basically, they would talk about babes and rock. Extreme close-up! Whoa! Whoa! Excellent! And of course, Garth would get really, really excited and really start to tweak out. And he's like, Garth, take your Ritalin, man. So they had the dream sequence with the diddly-doo. And I'm just telling you, this was like their fantasy moments. I mean, they had some awesome moments where they, Madonna's Justify My Love would play, and they had this really weird fantasy with Wayne and Garth and Madonna together, and this Garth wearing this black leotard and dancing seductively. It was just messed up, to be totally honest. So, early on, Wayne and Garth are high school students, and they brought in their teachers, including Ed O'Neill, who Ed O'Neill, of course, ends up in the movies. He is basically the person that's working at Stan Mikita's Donuts, and he does these really, awkward stories talking about his war flashbacks and everything, and the world's a twisted place, stuff like that. It was great. Garth's father, Beeve, got brought on because of his teeth, and that was played by the late, great Phil Hartman, and Wayne basically despised him because he was married to Hillary, Garth's mom, who was played by Kim Basinger at one point, too. And, of course, Garth's mom was a total babe, man. Well, Wayne and Garth later on appear to be younger adults. Wayne still lives with his parents, and this carries us on to our first film. And basically, a lot of stuff was all about Wayne's World. There was video games on Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Sega Genesis platforms. Also, a computer game that was done, which was a point-and-click adventure. There was a Wayne's World sketchbook that I actually had, by the way. And at the very end of it, there was a kind of a mail-in offer for Wayne's trademark baseball cap, which I got that, and obviously I've lost it throughout the years. There was a children's educational show named Between the Lions, and they took its inspiration from Wayne's World, the sketch and the theme song. They called it Wayne's World. And the movie Stay Tuned, which, like I said, has always been one of my favorite guilty pleasures. There was Dwayne's Underworld, which actually Mike Myers and Dana Carvey were supposed to be in the movie, but they were kind of filming Wayne's World, the movie, at the time, so they weren't able to do it. Step by Step, of course, went into that territory. They did JT's World, with JT and Cody doing the Wayne and Garth characters, and they did about the same storyline. We had some great music on the soundtrack, which we'll talk about that later, but basically we're here to talk about the movie Wayne's World. So, we'll talk about that real quick. Well, basically what I want to say is this. I love this movie. I love these movies, period. I think these movies are absolutely incredible. I think these movies are really funny. I think they're really smartly funny. And to be totally honest, I've probably seen them at least 1,000 times throughout the years. So, in 1992, when Wayne and Garth were going to go to the big screen, Lorne Michaels reached out to Penelope Spheeris and to direct this movie. And it did really well. I mean, it had a nice little gross of $121.6 million in its theatrical run. It's the 10th highest grossing film of 1992, and it is the highest grossing film ever based on a Saturday Night Live skit. So Mike Myers co-wrote the script, and the script movie was actually filmed in about 34 days. Mike Myers made his feature film debut in this. Of course, the movie included a great secondary cast. Rob Lowe, Tia Carrere, Laura Flynn Boyle, Brian Doyle Murray, Robert Patrick, as well as Chris Farley, Ed O'Neill, Meatloaf, and the scene with Alice Cooper. So, Total Film Magazine actually recognized Wayne's World as the 41st greatest comedy of all time. I think it's a little low. So, basically, here's the story of the movie. Wayne and Garth, we go from what we happen in the television series. Wayne and Garth are hosting Wayne's World, of course, the 10:30 cable access channel on Friday night. And they're basically looking at pictures of celebrity women. They play guitar, air drums, you know, what have you, normal stuff. They interview local people. They make fun of them. So one day, Benjamin Cain, which is Rob Lowe, he runs into this, and he's like, you know what? How about we put these guys on television? And his girlfriend at the time, which is Iona Sky, actually tells him, it's like, yeah, these guys are really funny. I watch them all the time. And she explains how popular Wayne and Garth are and how popular Wayne's World is, and then talks to Russell, which is funny we bring this up, because Russell is also kind of important, because he's Kurt Fuller. Yeah, Brell from No Holds Barred. So he needs to find out where the show is taped, and he wants to give Wayne and Garth an opportunity for a huge sponsorship. So Benjamin buys the rights to Wayne and Garth's show, Wayne's World, for about $10,000 and keeps them on as host for a pretty hefty salary. So Garth's like, this deal's kind of shady. I don't really know why, but I don't really want to talk to Wayne about it. And he doesn't. So with their newfound wealth, they attend a concert, and Wayne meets and falls in love immediately with Cassandra, which is played by Tia Carrere. And she is the bassist of the band Crucial Taunt, which are playing at the Gasworks that night. Well, they see each other more and more, so that puts a little bit of a strain on Wayne and Garth's friendship. And Benjamin gives them backstage passes to an Alice Cooper concert in Chicago. And of course we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're scum, we suck. that iconic scene that we've seen a billion times in every single movie clip show from a comedy movie countdown of all times. You see that all the time, and basically Alice Cooper just standing there like, yeah, you're worthy. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And, of course, where Alice Cooper shows off his intellectual side when he talks about Milwaukee. And he says, Milwaukee is the home of 3 socialist mayors. And then Wayne goes, does this guy know how to party or what? Huh? Okay. It's like, let's stick around and hang around with us. Yeah, we'll stick around and hang around with us. With Alice Cooper. And then the We're Not Worthy starts, and then I did it out of text, but it's still there. And basically, so after this, during the concert, at the same time, Benjamin's trying to get close to Cassandra and to try to sign her to a record deal. So the first show on the set, basically Wayne and Garth are kind of phased, and they, instead of playing their own instruments, they get this pre-recorded Wayne's World theme, which sounds absolutely horrifying. And they're like, what? What's going on? He's like, party on, Garth. And Garth's like, I guess. And then they start going into their shtick, which basically includes making fun of Noah's Arcade owner Noah Vanderhoff, which is played by Brian Doyle Murray, which is absolutely hilarious. And they make fun of him completely. They write little note cards, and they were told before, they're like, you know what, just take these note cards and write down the questions, and then you can ask him the questions, so you don't have to fumble around on live television. He's like, okay. He's like, hey, Russell, can I borrow your pen for a second? He's like, yeah, sure, Wayne, go ahead. So he writes on the note cards, and he writes some really funny things, actually. He says, like, he's a spinster boy. He's like, he blows goats. I have proof. And he's, like, asking him legitimate questions about the arcade and about the games. But at the same point, he's shooting on him with these little note cards that's making everyone laugh hysterically. And Garth starts laughing, and he's like, he gets confronted about it. He's like, and he's like, I was like, I thought it was really funny. And basically, right at this point, they come back, they take commercial break. Benjamin fires Wayne right off the top for like, you're fired. He's like, fine, I'm taking my show, and I'm going to leave. He's like, no, we own the show. He's like, fine, I'm just going to leave then. And then Garth's like, stuck by himself. He's like, welcome back. I'm having a good time. Not. And he's kind of fidgeting in his chair. And they make his friends, actually, they're in the iconic Bohemian Rhapsody scene, which is early on in the movie, which, oh my god. If you don't know the Bohemian Rhapsody scene, they're all sitting in the Mirthmobile. We already find out what's going on with Wayne and Garth. And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, this year Garth finally got pubes. And then he gets in the vehicle, and the first thing Garth says to him is, you didn't tell him about my pubes, did you? He's like, no. And of course we have the iconic Bohemian Rhapsody scene where everyone headbangs, and they show up to Stan Mikita's Donuts, and the gimmick is, if they get your order wrong, you get it completely for free. So they're like, yeah, I like a bunch of rollers and a Stanley Cup, and I like an orange drink and Dunkin'. I was like, let me repeat that back. Like an orange box, orange soda, and a set of 5 holes. He's like, yeah. Thank you. Drive around, please. Like, obviously people have done this before. So, they were trying to elicit free donuts, and it didn't really work out, so there's always that. And that's when they meet up with Ed O'Neill, and they told him he tells stories, and of course he, like, has flashbacks from the war and everything, and he's funny. I just think Ed O'Neill's hilarious. He goes into a little bit more in Wayne's World 2, and we'll talk about Wayne's World 2 in a minute. So, basically, Benjamin just wants the rights to the name of the show. It doesn't care if Wayne and Garth are a part of it or not. He just wants the name because the name equals the rights. And he sets his sights on Cassandra, and Garth meets up with Wayne. They reconcile their friendship, and everything's all completely fine. And they pretty much go off on each other for a while. So they work out a plan to get Wayne's World back. So they get information from... oh, this is funny. During the Alice Cooper concert, Chris Farley is like security backstage. And he is telling Wayne and Garth about Mr. Big, and Mr. Big is a record executive. And Mr. Big is Frankie Sharp from Sharp Records. So, basically, from that information that Chris Farley just voluntarily gives up, basically, we find out that Wayne and Garth are going to utilize that information to get Cassandra a record deal. So what they do is, they basically play a performance that Cassandra is doing with Crucial Taunt in Wayne's basement, and they're going to broadcast it to Frankie Sharp in his limo. So, basically, Benjamin learns about this. He drives to the place to try to stop it, and of course, there's a cop that's working with Wayne, and he detains him. He's not allowed to get in there. And we get the line, of course, about Benjamin being, if Benjamin was an ice cream flavor, he'd be pralines and dick. And I was like, yeah, that's very funny. So, it's really funny, and Frankie Sharp and Benjamin both arrive at the same time. So, Frankie tells Cassandra, it's, you know what, you're great, but you know what, it's not the right time. She walks away with Benjamin, and Wayne gets told by his crazy ex-girlfriend, Lara Flynn Boyle's character, Stacy, that she's pregnant. She's in a situation. So, Wayne and Garth get nearly incinerated when the house explodes, and Wayne's carrying Garth out, and they're both, like, covered in ashes. They're covered and burnt from head to toe. And then he's like, no, wait a minute. We're not going to end the movie like this. This is a bad ending, so let's do this again. Let's do the Scooby-Doo ending. So, basically, they do the same ending, and they show up, and they give the cops detain Benjamin. He's like, let's find out who you really are. And he pulls off the mask, and it's Old Man Withers from the Haunted Amusement Park. I wouldn't have got away with it, too, if it wasn't for you meddling kids. And Garth's like, good one, Shuggy. And then he's like, no. How about the mega happy ending? And Frankie Sharp shows up right at the nick of time and offers Cassandra a 6-record deal. And he's like, that about wraps it up. And then they kiss, and Benjamin realizes that being successful doesn't get you everything. And then Garth meets, early on in the movie, obviously, they're at Makita's again. And there is, I forgot about this scene actually. So Garth comes out and sees this blonde. And, I believe she's a blonde. I don't remember off the top of my head. She's like a vision of loveliness. We'll go with that. So Garth sees her, and he mouths the words to the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Foxy Lady. And, obviously this is in his head, that he is being all smooth and Don Juan, trying to seduce this dream woman of his. And the whole time, we notice that when we come back, we realize there's just another dream sequence, and Garth is just basically staring at her while Cassandra's going, why don't you just go talk to her? Why don't you just go talk to her? It's like ringing in his head, and he's like, whoa. And we get it from there. So, of course, at the end, he's like, she shows up, and he's like, I love you, Wayne. I love you, Cassandra. And he's like, I love you, Garth. And he's like, I love you, dream woman. And that's how we end the movie. So, that was Wayne's World 1. Let's talk about, it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got 85%. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs. It was nominated, and it was nominated for the 100 movie quotes. Swing! And We're Not Worthy, of course, we talked about it. It did debut at #1 in the box office, and there was a lot of really awesome things that were said about it. Basically, this was all about bringing in the slacker genre, the swing and sha, right, and monkeys might fly out of my butt, and of course that's what she said way before The Office ever existed, and party on, and not. So after apparently rather affirmative sentences in order to state the contrary, like Garth said, I'm having a good time. Not. And basically this was all, I mean, Bill and Ted started this, and more people, obviously Universal hooked their wagon onto Bill and Ted, and I understand that because it's a Universal production, but Wayne's World made it work better, honestly, I really do. I think Wayne's World is a 10 times better movie than Bill and Ted. You have Keanu Reeves and Mike Myers, which kind of have the same type of filmography. They both have amazing movies, they both have garbage movies, so it works fine. Dana Carvey didn't really fade off into the obscurity that Alex Winter did, but, I mean, I guess they're kind of there. So, there's always that. So they break the fourth wall numerous times, Wayne and Garth talking to the camera, and Wayne asking for the cream of some young guy when Benjamin's ordering Cantonese, which is absolutely hilarious. It makes me laugh every single time. I remember, I'll tell you a nice little story. In the movie, there is a scene where Cassandra and Wayne are talking in her bedroom, and Wayne does the thing where he hikes up his underwear and he walks around like making fun of everything, and he humps a pole, and then he's like, "How do you get my clothes all so fresh and so white?" He's like, "It's an ancient Cantonese secret." And then he's like, "Wait," and he pulls out the bottle, and it's Calgon, ancient Chinese secret, huh? And of course, they talk about the album Jerry and the Pacemakers, look at this, Jerry and the Pacemakers. I bet those guys actually have pacemakers now. So, of course, they jump. He's got his underwear up his crack, and he jumps on her, and they start making out. And at the bottom, it says gratuitous sex scene. Well, I remember watching this movie in the theaters in 1992, and I remember walking around my house going, gracious sex scene. And I was like, I don't know why, it just made me laugh hysterically. So, yeah, I mean, there was some really good stuff. Obviously, Wayne was very interested in owning this awesome white guitar, and he walks into the store, he's like, "Can I try this out?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, Wayne, you always do this." And Wayne comes up, he grabs the guitar, and he starts to play Stairway to Heaven, and they cut him off, he's like, no. And he's like, points the sign, and it says no stairway to heaven. And he's like, no stairway, denied. And at this time, Garth, of course, goes in, and he's drumming away, and because we didn't know this, but Garth actually can play drums, not just on his lap or on the couch. So he does a nice little drumming sequence as well. So, basically, this was really good, and the Bohemian Rhapsody song really got brought back into the mainstream with this movie, and a lot of people really remember it very much. The Soundtracks album did reach #1 in the Billboard album charts, and Gary Wright re-recorded Dreamweaver just for this movie specifically, and Tia Carrere sang all of her own songs when she performed anything, including her cover of Sweet's Ballroom Blitz, which I still prefer her version to this day, and it's the version I actually remember more of. Now we'll talk about the original soundtrack. It debuted on the Billboard 200 in 1992 at #1, and such great songs on it. Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, was on here. Cinderella's Hot and Bothered. Rock Candy by the Bullet Boys. Dreamweaver from Gary Wright. Sika Mikaniko. Yes, I'm reading this off the computer because it's hard for me to remember that. From Red Hot Chili Peppers. Black Sabbath's Time Machine, of course, the extended version of the Wayne's World theme. Tia Carrere's version of Ballroom Blitz. Foxy Lady from the Hendrix Experience. Alice Cooper, Feed My Frankenstein. Rhino Bucket, Ride With Yourself. Lovin' Your Lovin' from Eric Clapton. Why You Wanna Break My Heart, the single that Cassandra did the music video to. The one that, I think the snake fell asleep. And, actually, that was, what was it called? Touch Me. It was Touch Me that she did the video for. So she did 3 songs in the movie. And, there was another really funny scene with Lara Flynn Boyle I didn't talk about. They're at the gasworks, and they're upstairs. And Wayne runs into, Stacy and goes, whoa. Garth looks at her and is like, psycho hose beast. And, she walks in, and she's, like, really excited about it. Wayne's like, Wayne, I got you an anniversary present. And she's like, okay. He's like, okay, alright. Here, open it. So she hands it to him, and he opens it, and he's like, he looks at it dumbfounded. He's like, what is this? She's like, oh, it's a gun rack. A gun rack? A gun rack. I don't even own a gun, yet many guns to necessitate an entire rack. So, of course, she gets all frustrated and flustered, and she says, Wayne, you know what? If you keep doing this, you're going to lose me. And he's like, okay, so, we've all had those type of girlfriends in the past, and I'm sure Lara Flynn Boyle's character is somebody that all of us can relate to. So, it was a good movie, and you know what? It was very loved by everyone, and worked really well. Like I said, $120 million box office, and back in those days, $120 million was probably, for inflation, maybe $400,000, maybe 200 million, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how inflation works. I mean, obviously I don't know how to do math, if you haven't noticed by now. But this led to the second movie. And the second movie, trying to replicate the Wayne's World mantra, in most people's minds didn't work. I'll disagree with that completely, because I love this movie. Wayne's World 2 has one of the most iconic scenes in film history. And it actually has to do with two things. Number one of the scenes has to do with a character named Del Preston. And Del Preston's an actor by the name of Ralph Brown. If you guys remember him from The Stoker, actually, you probably don't, but he actually was in a movie earlier this year called Stoker that we put over heavily on this channel. And his death, spoiler alert, is the last scene of the movie. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Well, Mr. Big returns, Frankie Sharp, and obviously this time Benjamin is gone and he's replaced by another character, which is Bobby Conn, played by the great Christopher Walken. So, time has passed. I'm a little older, a little wiser. I'm starting to get hair in a lot of really weird places, man. Anyway, sorry, I love talking about this movie so much. So, in December 10th, 1993, this movie was released, and it was the sequel to Wayne's World. The budget was about $40 million, and the box office was just a little bit under $50 million. So, it didn't really do that well compared to the first one. So, I think a lot of people were not as into Wayne and Garth back then, because, I mean, they tried to strike when the iron was hot, but 93 pretty much at most already was over, so it wasn't really enough to continue it. But I love this movie. I love this movie so much, but I want to talk about that in a minute. So, basically, Wayne and Garth have now graduated from the basement to an abandoned doll factory in Aurora. He's like, well, we're in a doll factory, and I get this weird thing about, like, that movie, The Leprechaun, and he grabs the flashlight, and he's like, Garth, I'm the leprechaun! And Garth's like freaking out and everything. He's like, no, calm down, sweetie, you wouldn't worry about me, the leprechaun. And he's like, get away from me, leprechaun man, get away from me. And he's like, I don't know, how about we take a trip to Ireland and everything? And it just, oh my god, it made me laugh hysterically, and everybody just laughing in the entire set. Everyone's back for this one, except for, obviously, Benjamin, because Rob Lowe didn't want to do the second one for whatever reason. I don't really know why. I don't know the backstage reason why Rob Lowe didn't do the second one, but he just didn't. So, at the end of the broadcast, Wayne and Garth get in the Mirthmobile, and they go off to an Aerosmith concert. And I love this scene. I talk about it all the time. So, basically, there is a scene, they have backstage passes, so they give them backstage passes to Aerosmith, and they don't look like everyone else's. They have backstage passes, but they're completely red, and the other backstage passes everyone else seems to have this white stripe at the bottom. So they go to get backstage, and they're hanging out with Cassandra, and they're like, hey, Wayne, is like, then all of a sudden they see Heather Locklear. It's like, Garth, it's Heather Locklear. And she's signaling to us, there is a God. Heather be thy name. Shawink. Runs into Bobby Conn. It's like, Bobby! Heather! And then, of course, they have a thing. It's like, Cassandra goes into the secret entrance. Well, not secret entrance, but like the gate. And is like, are you coming? He's like, yeah. And he's like, he goes to show the backstage pass, which he's flashing to everybody that's trying to. He's like, I'll have backstage passes. I'm back here. He's like, yeah, you can go in. It's fine. So, see, Bass said that. So, that was for other people that are paying attention. Anyone that's watching this video that was laughing at that. So, we'll talk about Dumb and Dumber eventually. But, basically what we have here is a scene that, it's like kind of a throwaway scene, but it makes me laugh hysterically. So, they're all standing back here with, everyone goes in, and they get held back. Like, wait a minute, we got backstage passes. Like, no, you don't have the right kind of backstage pass. Obviously, the white stripe meant something. So, they're stuck. And they get to, they're just like looking around, they're like all the losers that are around them. It's like all these people, and they see these two nerds. And they run up to Wayne and Garth, he's like, hey, are you that guy from that Wayne's World show? He's like, Wayne's World party. He's like, no. And he's like, Garth's like, look, man, if Wayne says we're not, then we're not, okay? And Wayne looks at him, like, really? Are you kidding me? But of course, the nerds are so dumbfounded. And they're like, yeah, it's like, you guys sure look like him. He's like, I'm from Wilmette. I'm from Cicero. Isn't it cool to be downtown? And the whole time they're like, yeah, get these guys away from me. These guys are freaking me out, like, totally. He's like, it takes me 6 minutes door to door. And this guy says something that has been stuck in my head ever since I watched the movie. My mom gave me $1 and she dropped me off at the parking ride. And of course they find a way to finally get away from him. And, Wayne goes to bed that night. And he has a dream. And he has a dream that he runs into, Michael A. Nichols, who was playing, Jim Morrison for this. And a weird naked Indian, which is Larry Sellers. And Morrison tells Wayne it's his destiny to organize and put on a huge concert. So Wayne then asks if Garth's Sports Illustrated football phone is about to arrive, and Jim Morrison's like, it was sent to the wrong house. It'll arrive tomorrow with Stanley Cup 100 Years of Glory and the swimsuit issue. And I was like, okay. So the next morning he wakes up and Garth's like standing there, hovering over Wayne's bed. He's like, huh? He's like, look what I got in the mail today. My Sports Illustrated football phone. Whoa! The swimsuit issue. She reigns in Spain. And the Stanley Cup 100 Years of Glory. He's like, Garth, this is a sign. We will put on a concert. Oh, yes. We will put on a concert. And that's exactly what they do. So, they're going to call this show Wayne Stock. Obviously, they're playing on the Woodstock mantra, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So, Morrison tells him in the dream to hire Del Preston. Del Preston was Morrison's roadie back in the Doors days, and he's like, well, he was with us through all the good times and bad, man. If anybody can help you out, he can. So, basically, Del Preston has the same exact dream at the same time. They go to England to go meet up with Del Preston. He's like, did they say where he lives? Like, yes. He said exactly, London, England. So they have this stock shot of a plane flying to London, England, and they're standing in Piccadilly Circus. He's like, wow, what a crappy circus. Obviously, I'm not using curse words at this point. But yeah, it's basically what he says. And it made me laugh hysterically. So, they show up at Del Preston's door, and he is like, the door's open, and they go in, and Del Preston is hanging upside down with moon boots, like gravity boots, I guess you would call them in this case, and he's sleeping upside down. So they run into him, and basically he's like, they find out they had the same dream. He's like, was it Jim Morrison? Yes. Did he have a naked Indian? Yes. I have to ask you, don't you think it was a trifle bit unnecessary to see the crack in the Indian's bottom? Yes! I had the same dream. Whoa! And of course they go to, he's like, Del, thanks for coming back to Aurora with us. He's like, where's Aurora anyway? So before this, obviously we had, there was a lot of, reasoning for Del not to go with him. He's like, who are these American men and why are they coming to my house and interrupting my bat sleeping, apparently. But they had the same dream, so everything was okay. So, Del says we need to have it somewhere specific. He's like, this huge rock show has to be held in a big venue. It's like, how about Adlai Stevenson Memorial Park? So Wayne and Garth drive there in the rain and have a really awesome homage parody to Jurassic Park, and it makes me laugh hysterically. And basically they try to sign bands. They're on the phone with people, and they're talking to Del Preston. And he brings up the Wayne Stock logo on the computer, and Garth looks at him. He's like, for years, I thought that was a Mercedes emblem. And it made me laugh. It's like, Wayne Stock? I remember it. It rained a lot. I almost remembered something else there, but then I forgot again. I was like, this guy's like burnt out totally from his many years as a roadie. And he tells this story. And you know what? I don't know to this day if I can remember it completely. But I'm going to tell it. So, they're hanging out at, it's a bar that is kind of themed towards, like the Soviet Union. So basically, there is a I want to tell this story because I love this story so much. Basically, there's this bar, and it's kind of like the Gas Works, but it steams towards the Soviet Union. It's like a communist bar, basically, so they have like a communist party. We'll talk about that later. So, Del tells a story about brown M&Ms. And if I don't remember it specifically, I'm sorry. And I don't have anything I'm reading in front of me. I promise you right now, I'm not reading anything. But I can remember the story pretty vividly, so I'm going to recite it for you. So they're talking, and he shows up, and there's people listening to the story. He's like, see if I remember this. Selonka, formerly Ceylon. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to find enough 1,000, we had to find 1,000 brown M&Ms to fill a brandy glass, or Ozzy wouldn't go on stage that night. So, Jeff Beck pops his head round the corner, mentions there's a little sweet shop on the edge of town. And we go. And it's closed. So it's me, Keith Moon, and David Crosby breaking in this little sweet shop. So we break in. Well, instead of a guard dog, they have this great big bloody Bengal tiger. Now I managed to take out the tiger with a can of mace. But the shopkeeper and his son, they were a different story altogether. I had to beat them to death with their own shoes. And everybody's dead silent when he says it. And of course he pauses for a second, but luckily I got the M&Ms, and Ozzy went on stage and did a great show. And Garth just looks at him and was like, Del, when did you turn into a nut bar? And I was like, yeah. An iconic scene from this movie. I love this movie so much. It's so great. So, Cassandra, of course, is now working with Bobby Kahn. Bobby Kahn apparently is the producer working for Sharp Records, so he's working for Mr. Big. And Bobby is trying to pull her completely away from Wayne. He's trying to woo her completely, blocking his calls and everything, pretty much keeping them apart from each other. I know how that feels. And Wayne gets his friends dress up Garth like a policeman. One of the person looked like a biker. One person was dressed like a construction worker. I wonder what we're trying with this. So, they spy on Bobby and Cassandra, and all of a sudden, they, I'm going to tell them out of context a little bit, but I'm going to do this. So, they run into Bobby. Bobby spots them, and they slide down the telephone pole. Garth lands on the concrete. He's like, guys, they fell on my keys! And they help him up, and they run, and basically they run into this door. Well, this door is a back door to a club, but we don't know at the time, and there is a neon green sign, greon, that's not even a word, that says the toolbox. Yeah, you know where we're going with this. So, they go inside, and they run onto a stage, and they're pounding on the doors. Wayne, of course, dressed like a construction worker. Garth is a cop. The other guys, dressed up as well. Hold on, give me a second. One guy's dressed, oh yeah, there you go. There's a biker, there's a guy from the Navy, there's a guy from, there's Wayne dressed as the construction worker with a fake mustache, and Garth dressed as a cop. They run into the toolbox, stand on stage, and they're pounding on the door. Well, they're playing, I don't remember, to the left, to the right, keep it going, it's alright. That song. I don't remember that. I remember to the left, to the right. Yeah. It's a Stereo MC, Step It Up. Yeah, I had to check that because obviously I like to be precise on my stuff. So they run into it and they're playing Step It Up by Stereo MCs, and all of a sudden the DJ spots them standing on the stage and they're like, So he pulls out, he stops stereo MCs, he pulls out a 45, and puts it on the turntable, and starts YMCA. So yeah, they turn around, and Wayne Garth and their two friends do YMCA. And it's really awesome, because with Wayne only being the only one to see him, obviously, the Weird Naked Indian is there too. So they're all doing YMCA, and everybody goes crazy for it, and it's a really funny moment in the movie. Well, at this point, actually, I told us out of context. The Calgon scene is not in 1, it's in 2. Because that sets up the next scene I want to talk about. The Jerry and the Pacemakers conversation they have in 1. I mentioned that correctly. But in 2, it is the Calgon conversation, which I talked about in 1. But that's okay, because, I mean, I'm correcting myself here, so it's alright. So, basically, they have a conversation. Cassandra and Wayne are, like, talking about their laundry. I mentioned that already. And he's like, I wish Garth had someone to do his laundry. At this point, Garth's at the laundromat. And Garth runs into Kim Basinger. And Kim Basinger is, a gorgeous, like, I guess you would use, this was way before it happened, obviously. This is before American Pie. I guess the word MILF would be coming up to me. But it's never mentioned if you have a kid or not, so she's kind of like I guess the word that in this vernacular nowadays would be cougar. I guess we'll go with that. So, this conversation starts with Wayne and Cassandra having the laundry conversation, and he reveals that I did a little detective work. He's like, you spying on me. You did spy on me. And it's like, shows her the pictures. It's like, what was this? And he's like, you were spying on me, you bastard. And she breaks off the relationship, and she ends up getting engaged to Bobby. Rather hastily. Some people do crazy things when they are thinking that there's no other option. Anyway, Garth meets... Okay, we'll get to that now. So, Garth comes in to the laundromat, meets this cougar, Kim Basinger in this case, and she's doing her laundry while Garth's doing his laundry. And she pulls out a pair of, like, silky panties, and he's like, ugh, dare they? And, of course, he's eating red licorice. He's like, would you like some red licorice? He's like, sure. And he's like, and of course, she seductively twirls it around her tongue. Garth's like, because he's obviously never dealt with this before. And he's backing up, like, rapidly, and he's, like, trying to stay away. And the sign goes off, and he's like, oh, she's like, what's your name? He's like, Garth Algar. What's yours? I'm Honey. Hornay. And Garth just brilliantly goes, nice to meet you, Miss Horny. And he's like, no, it's Hornay. It's French. He's like, okay, Miss Hornay. And he starts giggling, like, in Garth fashion. And she's like, would you like to have dinner some night? He's like, well, I like to have dinner every night. The bell goes off, and he opens the door, and his underwear is shrunk. And it's, like, tiny. It's, like, so you can put it on a doll. And he's like, I like him teeny and toasty. He grabs it, and he's like, bye. And he walks away, and he leaves. That's the end of this segment. Well, basically, they end up, like, they end up fooling around. They have, like, an adulterous-style deal. Garth's wearing, like, a bathrobe and blowing bubbles with a pipe. He's like, good morning, darling. I trust that you slept well. I hope I wasn't too much of an animal. And she's like, come, hold me. You know I will. And of course he blows the bubbles and makes me laugh. And she realizes that she needs to get Garth to kill her husband. So he's like, you should kill my husband. He's like, kill your husband? Pulls out this ginormous revolver. He's like, wow, that's a pretty big gun. So she grabs the gun. He's like, well, you know, if you kill him, you can have me. You can have me anytime you want to, and it would be okay because he'd be dead and out of the way. And she's like, and he, of course, is like getting his leg rubbed the whole time. And he's like, he is a dead man. And he walks out the door. He takes the gun, puts it in the plant, and runs away from Honey. And that's the end of that segment. It makes me laugh hysterically. So, Wayne's stock tickets are finally selling, but not that great because no bands have shown up. So Wayne has tried to book bands, and it's not working out very well. When he gets asked earlier on in the show, he's it's funny because he's talking to Cassandra, and Walken's like, well, Bobby Conn in this case, He's like, so Cassandra's got real gigs, so we don't need to worry about this fairy tale event. He's like, yeah, it's like, I was like, who's gonna be at this Wayne stock? And of course, sees someone at the mix table, like flipping through CDs, like Aerosmith and Pearl Jam. He's like, wow, it's pretty cool. And then sees a guy walking by, and he goes, who else? And he's like, Van Halen. And Garth looks at him and was like, wow, Van Halen, who else? He's like, yeah, who else? And it's funny because he sees this guy off the side, like an old man, like banging on a kayak with a, I don't know, it was like a mallet or like a carving tool, I don't know, it's like an old man fashioning a kayak with a log, and everybody looks at him strange. He's like, Rip Taylor! Yeah, Rip Taylor! And Cassandra marks out, she's like, Rip Taylor? He's God in my country. He couldn't walk through the streets without being mobbed. He's like, yeah, that's great, because he'll be there, because for some reason he spots Rip Taylor dumping confetti over someone's head. So he's like, and I thought you would play too? She's like, I would be honored. And of course Bobby Con's like, no, she's got real gigs. It's like, fine, whatever. So, of course, he's dismissive about everything. Well, no bands have shown up. Everybody's coming out to the thing. Oh, it's funny because we see Ed O'Neill again, and he's there, and there's a white door, and he opens the doors, and there are, like, secret agents, like ninjas, like, training for combat missions. And he's like, we've got them here in case we need them. We don't know why, but we've got them. So it works. It's really interesting. It's a funny segment. I thought it was really funny. None of the bands have shown up. So Wayne goes on television and he freaks out his entire audience. He's like, so Wayne stock tickets are on sale. Actually, there are plenty of excellent Wayne stock tickets on sale. There's this rumor that none of the bands showed up or have signed and no one's going to come. And I just want to let you know, Jim Morrison came to me in a dream last night and with a weird naked Indian and told me everything was going to be okay. So of course everyone freaks out on Wayne because he thinks he's losing his freaking mind. Because no one can see the weird naked Indian at this point. Well, we find out that Bobby Con is going to marry Cassandra and Wayne has to stop it. So in true Graduate fashion, literally, this parody is done specifically. Mrs. Robinson's even playing in the background. So he drives to the church. But before he drives to the church, he runs into this gas station attendant and he pulls over and it's like his vehicle's about to die and it putters out finally at a gas station. He walks into the gas station attendant and he sees, he's like, where's Gordon Street? He's like, Gordon Street? I once knew a girl on Gordon Street, but that was a long time ago, when I was young. He breaks the fourth wall again. I know this is a small part, but can we do better than this? So he moves this old man out of the way, and he replaces him with Charlton Heston, of all people. And Heston shows like, Gordon Street. I once knew a girl on Gordon Street. That was a long time ago, when I was a young man. I'll never forget that moment of two people that would finally meet that magic day on Gordon Street. And Wayne's like tearing up. He's like, that's 2 blocks to the left. And then go for it. He's like, thank you. And he gets going. He gets stopped again. He gets stopped by a cop. And it's funny because the cop turns out to be Robert Patrick. And opens the door and Wayne looks at him and he shows him a picture of Eddie Furlong. And of course said, have you seen this boy? And he's like, no! And he speeds away. And we show up to the church. And he shows up to the church. And he sees the veil about to be dropped, and the kiss about to happen, and he's like, Jesus, God, no! And he starts banging on the glass windows, and he turns around and he realizes it's someone else. And he sees that there's 2 churches that are right across the road from each other, and he's like, okay, sorry, good luck! And he runs over to the other one, and he does the same exact thing. He's like, Jesus, God, no! And Cassandra's father is Jeff, and this is done early on in the show. I want to talk about James Hong in this. So in the middle of the movie, Wayne is trying to learn Cantonese to impress Cassandra's father, which is Jeff. He's like, he tries to say it, and they do it in broken English, and he understands. Like, he's like, you learned Cantonese very well, and he's like, then they broke into the cheesy 80s style kung fu movies where it's dubbed over. It's like, very well. If that is your custom, then prepare to die. And they have a sword fight, and Wayne Wayne gets kicked in the nuts, and like Benoit balls fall out. That's what it looked like, or balls of some sort. They fall out, and it's funny. And they go back and forth, they battle, and then the phone rings, and it's Sports Illustrated, and he's still in the dubbed voice, and he's like, yes. He received a Sports Illustrated football phone, and he does the crane, and then he kicks him in the nuts, the balls fall out, and then of course that's how we end the fight. So he's trying to get the respect, try to win the heart of Cassandra via her father. So, we go back and forth with that, and of course, Jeff is there, and Wayne, you are this is what leads to him going to go find out, because he finds out from Jeff, because Jeff calls, and he says, basically, this information may not be so useful to you so late in the movie, but I've chosen another one worthy for my daughter. He is promised security and a green card, and of course, and tell me who he is, and he shall die at my hand. He goes by the name of Bobby, and of course, he's like, no, this is going to happen. And he's like, you are a valiant warrior, but I've chosen someone a lot more successful for my daughter. So Wayne goes to stop the wedding, and he successfully does. And they take the new guitar that she got as a wedding present, they put it up against the door, so they block it in. He grabs her, who's still in her wedding gown, and they run over to Adlai Stevenson Memorial Park. They show up, and of course, at the park, Del Preston is teaching Chris Farley and the rest of the people how to be a roadie. And shooting tennis balls at Chris Farley, and he goes to grab the microphone. Get that microphone stand! He drops the microphone stand, he runs in, and when he's trying to grab it, he's being pelted with tennis balls. And he gets so frustrated that he starts throwing balls back and everything, and he starts freaking out. And he's like, Mike Myers looks at him, he takes off his glasses, and he goes, "You're nothing, you're less than nothing. What's keeping you here?" And he goes, "Because I just got no place else left to go." And it's just a really awesome moment there. So, basically, Del Preston reveals that he is absolutely insane because he has machine guns ready to go for crowd control. And we've got that. So, we show up, and none of the bands have shown up. Cassandra's there, and of course he yells out to Jim Morrison. And he yells, "Jim!" at the top of his lungs, and they show up, and Garth's with him this time. And he goes, Wayne, it's like, "Jim, none of the bands have showed up." And he's like, "I know, and they're not gonna." And he basically tells him that he was learning a lesson. And basically, Garth gets mesmerized by the fact that it's Jim Morrison. And Sammy Davis Jr. shows up at one point, and Sammy Davis Jr. in this voice is played by Tim Meadows, and of course it's really funny, and they talk back and forth, and he's like, "Let Sammy go away," and they talk a little bit, and Wayne and Garth get left in the desert pretty much to die out there, and that's the end of the movie. Once again, that's not the end of the movie. That's a false ending of the movie. And he's like, "No, we're not gonna go out like this. How about we go to the happy ending?" So before that, I want to mention there's 3 specific endings. Number 1, they talk to Jim Morrison. He says no one's going to come. All that matters is that they tried their best. They turn around and they lose their way. They can't escape the dream sequence, and they die of thirst. So they drive the vehicle to find the bands. A helicopter comes up, and they drive their car off the side of an embankment. Kind of Thelma and Louise ending. And we get to the final ending, which everyone's clapping, and Garth shows up, and he's like, "We have some tainted red rope licorice." Oh, by the way, I want to mention this. After the Honey Hornet thing that happens with Kim Basinger earlier on, Garth is actually introduced to, I gotta think about what her name is off the top of my head, I can't remember. Okay, so they go to submit the permit applications, and they run into, Drew Barrymore, who's Björgen Kjörgen. And Wayne was talking about how he did a project, and back in high school, it was like, Björgen Kjörgen from Knjörgen near the Björgen Fjords. Knjörgen, it's a Kalargan province that was near the Björgen River. He's like, "Yeah, well, stop me if I'm wrong, but your rainfall varies from 3 inches in the winter to 200 inches in the summer." And she's like, I am impressed with your quest for knowledge, and I hope to make love to you in the near future. And she's like, she's completely serious, too. And Wayne's like, okay. And, she goes to get the permanent applications. Garth runs into, I gotta think about what her name is. I gotta see what it is. I'm trying to find out what her name is off the top of my head. I believe it's Olivia Diabo, who is Betty Jo. She is, like, the receptionist at the permanent applications office. And that's obviously where he runs into, what's his name? Oh my god, it's such a long day. So, it's, where are you? Oh, anyway, if I didn't remember it at the time, but the nerds at the beginning of the movie, that ones I talked about with my mom gave me $1 and dropped me off the parking ride, that was literally Robert Smigel and Bob Odenkirk. I did not know that until just now, actually. But I want to go backwards a little bit, too. Mr. Scream is what I want to bring up. So Wayne and Garth go on a radio station to promote Wayne Stock. And they're talking about, we got a lot of great bands coming, and basically, what it is a really funny moment, because Handsome Dan shows up, and he's like, they've just heard this voice before, so they don't know who it is. So Handsome Dan shows up, and he, or who they think is Handsome Dan, Ted McGinley. And Ted McGinley shows up, and he's like, well, nice to meet you, Handsome Dan. And he's like, I'm not Handsome Dan. And he walks away, and we find out Ted McGinley's Mr. Scream. Well, Handsome Dan is Harry Shearer, and Harry Shearer's like, hey. And, of course, he's, like, kayfabing completely. He's like, work is hard. He's like, I could say anything right now, like, you're a complete tool. He's like, uh-huh. And you wouldn't say anything because you're just a freak with a microphone. Uh-huh. It's not even challenging anymore. Isn't that true, Sphincter Boy? Huh? Whoa, they're coming in all the time. And, of course, the whole time Wayne and Garth are making fun of him. And he's, like, totally not acknowledging it because he's like, uh-huh. He's, like, playing with whatever at the console and trying to get the next song ready for play, I guess. I'm trying to mention everything I can. Betty Jo's there with the permanent applications. There's a segment in the movie with Bobby Slayton. He's walking back and forth with watermelons and a plate glass window, and of course that ends up breaking during the sequence of the Mrs. Robinson sequence, trying to get back from the from the church on time, the right way to do it. So, basically, what we have here is, I think I mentioned nearly everything. Yeah. Olivia Diabo, Betty Jo, is, she's dressed nerdy, she looks like Garth, and, she's the permanent applications office, secretary. She shows up to, I gotta remember who this guy is. I know this guy off the top of my head. I think I know this, but I gotta remember who it is. It's, God, what is his name? Oh my god, I can't remember his freaking name. Hold on, I have to find this because it's driving me insane. Give me a second, sorry. Yeah, Wayne, Ed O'Neill's character is named Glenn, actually, and I completely forgot about his absolute name. So, I'll actually mention the line specifically. Wayne's like, excuse me, what are you guys doing in the middle of the street? And, Bobby Slayton's like, we're putting these chickens in crates and stacking them right here. Jim's job is to make sure we have plenty of watermelons. He's like, so you're selling watermelons? No. We have to make sure we have plenty of them stacked at all times. And, just like with these here chickens, like, what do these guys do? He's like, well, their job is to walk back and forth this big plate glass window every couple of minutes. He's like, weird. And he's like, yeah, I gotta wonder if it's gonna pay off later on. So, basically, I have to find this here. Where are you? I don't know if I find this really good. Yeah, I remember most of this stuff, actually. I talked about it already. So, I gotta find this. What's his name? Yeah, yes! It was Kevin Pollak, yeah. I don't know why I forgot, but it's Kevin Pollak is the guy, Jerry Siegel, who is at the permit office, and he's the person that's in charge. Well, he's got a kind of a weird eye problem. And he's like, what, is something wrong? He's like, what do you mean? It's like, it's my eye, isn't it? It's like, why would we want to look at your eye? It's, is there something wrong with that weird eye? He's like, there's nothing wrong with my eye. It's just that this one has no pigment. You see, I'm a partially ocular albino, but I'm fine with it. I have perfect 20/20 vision with both eyes. So you're serious about putting on a concert? He's like, you kidding? I give my right eye. And he's like, you realize there's certain jurisdictions you have to follow. And he's like, well, I like to think I have an eye for details. And then, of course, he's like, well, I'll just sign this in triplicate and bring it back to the office. He's like, well, we'll cross the T's and dot the lowercase j's. And he walks out. Well, he runs into, like I said, Garth runs into Olivia Diabo, who is Betty Jo at this point, and they end up falling for each other during the last segment of the movie, during the big concert scene. So the first thing, the weird naked Indian shows up in a limo, opens the door, and Rip Taylor comes out, and they're marking out for Rip Taylor, of course. And also another limo pulls up, and it's Aerosmith. So Aerosmith get ready to get on stage. They do Shut Up and Dance, and everybody dances along, and that was awesome. So shows up with long day. Shows up with Jim Morrison, and basically says, I gotta remember exactly what it is. I gotta find it here. Basically, they promised all the bands would show up, and the reason why you had to do this is because you had to know why Cassandra loves you. So, basically, you see the Gin Blossoms and Nash Cato from Urge Overkill. That's a Ben deal, not me. And they're being escorted out of a limo at the very end of the credits by the Weird Naked Indian as the closing credits begin. Now, the Mirthmobile shows up in a limousine length, and that's how Aerosmith shows up. So that's the movie, and it was really awesome. And after the movie's over, they do a... the Weird Naked Indian shows up, and he's got a tear coming from his eye. Obviously, we're going to parody that as well. So Wayne and Garth are, like, looking over a completely trash Memorial Park, and of course he's got the tear falling from his face, like the iconic commercials of the 70s. And he's like, you know, we're going to pick this up. And he, like, takes one of those pitchfork gimmicks that people use to pick up trash. And he's like, see? And he puts it in the trash bag. And that's how we end the movie. Wayne's World. I'm telling you right now, they did some new stuff as well, actually. Wayne and Garth showed up at the 2008 MTV Movie Awards, and oh my god, they popped the entire crowd. It was absolutely awesome. And they did a sketch for the first time since 1994, actually. Basically, they're now in their early 40s/50s, depending on how you look at it. Garth's finally gotten some pubes, and he named them Tony and Fred. They're discussing Tila Tequila, who was actually big at this time, and talking about the best porn names based on movies from 2007, 2008. So, number 10, Horton Hears a Hoe. Number 9, National Pleasure 2, Book of Secretions. 8, I Am Legend, In Bed. 7, The Suck It List. 6, I Know Who Drilled Me. 5, Scatatouille. 4, Gush Hour 3. 3, No Country for Old Balls. 2, Alvin in the Chipmunks, and number 1, Iron Man. But that was not the end of Wayne and Garth at all, not at all, because in 2011, Dana Carvey hosted Saturday Night Live, and he brought back a lot of his former characters. He brought back the church lady, and they did the Continental, sadly, not with Phil Hartman, obviously, because he was the iconic voice of the Continental. The voice was still there, but I mean, Phil Hartman obviously sadly was not. So they did a cold open, did Wayne and Garth, and basically a monkey literally flew out of his butt. And they're discussing their picks for the Oscars, and they're talking about how much they love Winter's Bone due to the fact that the double entendre. They never watched it, they just liked the title. And they made fun of James Franco and Anne Hathaway, so that was the end right there. Well, we've come a long way in a long amount of time. Oh, by the way, I'd be remiss if I don't talk about the Wayne's World 2 soundtrack. Robert Plant's version of Louie Louie is on this. Aerosmith doing Dude Looks Like a Lady, as well as Shut Up and Dance, which was the credit song. The Gin Blossoms, Idiot Summer. It was called Superstar. It was a superfan, a collective including Chrissy Hind on vocals and musicians from Urge Overkill, a nice little supergroup there. Joan Jett and the Black Hearts of Rock and Roll. Spirit in the Sky from Norman Greenbaum. And Out There, Dinosaur Jr., Mary's House from Four Non Blondes. Golden Earrings, Radar Love, which is Wayne's driving song. Can't Get Enough from Bad Company. Edgar Winter's Frankenstein, which wrestling fans would know as 911's entrance theme in ECW. Shut Up and Dance, like I mentioned, and YMCA, which was an unseen, uncredited, hidden track on some of the releases of the soundtrack. So, in retrospect, we've had a lot of things come back. They've done a lot of remakes of things. You know what? They've done a lot of sequels that need to have happened. I want another Wayne's World. It's time to find out what's going on in Wayne and Garth's world right now. Is there Wayne Jr. or Garth Jr. now? I'm sure there probably is by now. What are they doing? Are they still hosting their show out of a doll factory, or are they now in a television studio? Did they lose their show? I mean, there's a lot of questions to be answered about Wayne and Garth. And hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions someday. So, hopefully we have not seen the end of Mike Myers and Dana Carvey as the iconic Wayne and Garth characters. So hopefully, somehow, some way, they'll bring them back in some form. I think there could be still a Wayne's World 3. I think it would really help both careers, Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey especially. Master of Disguise was a total flop, and Mike Myers hasn't been funny in a long time. Sadly, I mean, it's not Mike Myers, it's the fact these scripts he's picking are absolutely terrible. The Love Guru is one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time. But Mike Myers can still show brilliance via the Shrek movies. So, we know that it's still there, and there's still a demand. There has to still be a demand for Wayne's World, because when I Googled this to check out this video, to do research for it, I found out there was a lot of Wayne's World parodies. There's a lot of people that still remember Wayne's World, and I'm sure a lot of you out there still remember Wayne's World. So, I did want to bring this up, and not just the fact that I didn't have a video today. I decided I wanted to give you guys a little retrospective on this Saturday Night Live produced sketch that became a movie, that became a pop culture icon. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry about the looking upwards. I mean, I didn't really have time to do notes for this. I kind of just did this on the spur of the moment. I remembered most of the stuff from memory, but there's a lot of stuff I took from Wikipedia. I'll give that some credit right there, and they helped me with a lot of things. The Wayne's World theme obviously is from YouTube, and obviously it's copyrighted material, so I just want to let you know that real quick. It's not mine, I'm just using it, so it's all as that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, enjoyed this nice little look into Wayne's World, and you know what? If people give me credit for this, and if they like this video, you know what? I might take on the State very soon, because I'm a big fan of the State, and the State's genesis from the State to all the way to Reno 911 was stuff like Viva Variety, and even past Reno was stuff like Stella that I want to talk about too. So we'll talk about that somewhere down the road. I don't know when exactly, but it'll probably happen sooner rather than later if you guys like this video. So if you guys did like this video, share it on your social networking. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Tell your friends about it. Watch it as many times as you can. Tell your friends to do the same. If you like these videos, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. There's so much movie content on this channel. There's AJ's movie reviews. Ben's going to do some movie reviews somewhere down the road. Will does movie reviews. And, of course, a character that we like to call Mr. Flashback does movie reviews. So, we're getting Santa with Muscle somewhere in the near future. I'm not exactly sure when it's going to be. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Little tutorial coming up later this week, so check out for that. Ben's videos. Having some problems shooting those right now, but as soon as we get them, I'm going to post them here on Pop. So we got that. So if you like these videos, thumbs them up. Do leave a comment. Do subscribe. Go back and watch all the other playlists here on Pop. Everything from Disney to Universal to wrestling, Celebrity Apprentice, award shows, SeaWorld, and all points in between. So, I'm going to get off here. And until tomorrow, party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. And that's all I gotta say about that. Whoa! Whoa!